Guys, thanks for joining me today. How does a guy get started into cover crops? That's a fantastic question. We're going to talk about that today. There was a lot of questions about that up at that farmer to farmer meeting. How do I know what seeds to pick, when to plant them, how to plant them, where to plant them, and all that stuff. First things first with cover crops, there's going to be a massive learning curve, but it's a very easy learning curve. Takes minimal time, minimal data acquisition, and pretty minimal effort for the most part. You still fertilize your fields like normal, unless you want to work on fertility experiments. You pick a 5-acre spot, 10-acre spot out in a field, and that is going to be your cover crop thing. 5 to 10 acres will get you as much data as doing a 100-acre piece. On a 5 or 10-acre piece, you can try several different blends to see what plants do better than others. I'll try two different mixes, see how that works out, and then just make notes of which plants came and which plants didn't, which ones were easy to control, whether you use a mechanical tillage or chemical to control them. We don't want to be introducing weeds to your area that you can't control, so you need to find, that's part of your seed selection, is plants that can control in your current operation. We'll get to plants a little more detailed here. But yeah, so keep it simple. Before you even started cover crops, take a shovel, stab that into the dirt, pick that dirt up, and videotape you crumbling and working that dirt. Make note of how many worms you see, other bug life, how it crumbles, if it's compacted or not. Does it look like cottage cheese, or does it look like the sand out of your kid's sandbox, or does it just turn to dust and powder? Does it stay onto roots, does it smell? All them kind of things relate to soil health. And so just kind of find out where you're starting from. And you're going to do this for 5 years. If you're going to do cover crops for 1 year, and the next year you're like, they just didn't do what I wanted, it just don't work here, that doesn't fly. Anything cannot work for 1 year, or anything can be fantastic for 1 year. So you need to do it for 5 years minimum. That's why I say pick a 5-acre piece and stick with it and make it work, because it is worth the headache. My own example, I had 4 years of failure with the cover crops out in my field trying to interseed with soybeans and corn. I was trying all these trendy stuff. I was seeing a lot of data from out of Missouri and down south there, of all these great plants to use, and they none of them ever worked up here. Some of them were a bigger seed, like a soybean type size seed, where they had a lot of germination issue from the broadcaster, and a lot of them weren't designed for broadcasting. So I kind of lived and learned. So then this last year I picked things that grew here, natural plants to us, small grains, ryegrass, clovers, alfalfa. Them are all things, triticale. Them are all things that we know we can grow because we've grown them as a crop in the past. So I did that last year, and all that stuff works very well in a broadcast system, and it worked tremendous. After harvest, that field looked like a sod field that somebody spread some soybean dust onto, soybean chaff. And so it worked. So year number 5, I finally got that piece kicking in. My other little field, I've had some cover crop that I've been playing with, and that worked out fantastic on year 1. So it all depends, but that field, we worked it in. And every seed we put out there germinated, and the field was set aside, or part of the field was set aside for the summer, and that cover crop just was massive. I mean, there's radishes like your thigh. It was pretty cool. So just be patient, make notes, some basic notes, and work with it there. So how are we going to get started? First thing is resources. You got to find your local support group, whether it's your NRCS, your local university extension office, a neighbor, or a farmer as close to you as you can find that's been doing this. Even the seed dealers. The seed dealers, Albertley Seed House, tremendous resource there. Your extension offices, if they're not familiar with it, same with your NRCS. If they're not familiar with it in your area, they have gigabyte after gigabyte, thousands of data through their other offices that they can get you information. The best thing you can do if you are at all curious about cover crops is the cover crop guide. There's the web site to go to get this, or you can get it from your university extension or your NRCS office. This thing is basically all you need to get 90% of your information to be able to go to a seed dealer, and they're just going to help you fine tune a little bit, because they'll have the experience to tell you, well, okay, yep, we see you got these 5 hybrids or these 5 seeds species. This one just isn't going to work with this one because of this reason. So they're going to recommend maybe take this one out and replace with this plant over here, so you still get your 5. So the seed dealers are fantastic. Albert Lee Seed House is a fantastic resource to work with. So what we need to do is to come up with a goal. What is our goal? Do we want to do end credits? Are we stopping erosion? Are we working on soil health? Are we working on pasture? Are we working on compaction shallow? Are we working on compaction deep? There's a lot of side effects. This is where we're going to get into side effects of cover crops and some of the hidden dollars. I'm all about the dollar, okay? So my nitrogen program right now through the co-op, depending on the year and the price of fertility, is between 70 and 100 bucks an acre for my nitrogen for corn. So I'm trying to spend less than 70 bucks an acre on cover crops that can produce enough end credits for my next year's corn. So that's a hard thing to do, but at the same time, we are gonna, for them plants to produce nitrogen credits are gonna be your clovers, alfalfas, legumes, the soybeans and that kind of stuff. Some of them have a fantastic, just a thick hair root system, but it's shallow. So it'll turn that top 3-4 inches, it'll just fill that up with roots. It's gonna stop wind erosion because there's green matter above the soil, and it's gonna stop water erosion or really reduce it because all them roots are there, and that matter on top, it's going to stop the rain from crusting and bouncing and washing off, and the roots are going to hold that soil there, and they're also going to give channels for the water to get into the soil. Some of our other N-type plants, we're going to mix in some scavengers. So we're going to have alfalfas, clovers, ryegrass, things that are going to create nitrogen, and we're also going to put in things that are going to store that nitrogen. The tillage radishes and things like that. But what's a tillage radish going to do? It's going to send a massive root, like literally it comes out the size of my pinky and it narrows down, and it's going to punch that root down, 4, 5, 8 feet, however far it can go in its amount of growing time. And so if them get seeded thick enough, they're going to take care of deep compaction for us at the same time. But we're not trying to fix compaction, but that's a side effect, is we have better or reduced compaction. So how much money, as a side effect to try and create end credits, we eliminate erosion and we've reduced, whether we cured compaction 100% or not, we don't know. On my farm, you bet we did. If I was out in the Red River Valley, I don't know. But here, yep, we've fixed compaction just by trying to work on end credits. We've stopped erosion by trying to work on end credits. Our soil health has just been a graph shooting to the sky by trying to do end credits. So imagine what would happen if we tried to work on them things as an individual thing. What if all you wanted to do was build some soil health? You love the texture, your fertility program's great, you don't mind spending a little money with your co-op for nitrogen. You just wanted to work on some soil health, just kind of get it a little more nice, a little better smell, But a lot of the plants that do that, they're going to stop erosion, they're going to build end credits. You might end up with some end credits that you didn't even think about. So there's money in here that the $70 to put in a cover crop to produce N versus the $70 at the co-op, this $70 is worth a whole lot more in the long run. You see where I'm going here? This $70 at a commercial fertilizer does nothing other than put some end credits in the soil. This $70 for an end credit does a half a dozen fantastic side effects for free. And so in the other videos you look at, if I'm able to not have to take out my DMI out there, that is a tremendous cost. That's 30 or 40 bucks an acre right there by not having to do that tillage to fight that compaction. So again, now that's 70 bucks, you got $30 an acre of that gone towards reduced tractor time out in the field. Well, that makes our nitrogen credit that much cheaper in the long run. We're not doing cover crops for 1 year. Let me keep saying that. We're thinking long term. For the rest of my farming life is where I'm starting today. My cover crop stuff today is for 10 years from now. My cover crop stuff when I retire is for my next generation. And when they start doing it, it's for their next generation. This is a lifestyle change to our soil. This is a whole system. This isn't just a fly-by-night thing. So we got to get a goal. And then where are we going to do it? For me, I'm trying to interseed into my this year's crop. I'm trying to interseed that nitrogen producing crop for next year. So I'm just going to simply take the broadcaster and I drive around there and I blow it out. Whether it's a little for a 5 acre, 10 acre cover crop, you can just get that simple $500 or $1,000 broadcast spreader that goes on your 3-point hitch. It holds 500 or 800 pounds of seed. So you might have to lift some bags. You know, sometimes you got to work a little bit in modern day farming, but you just dump the bags in there and you mix it up and you drive. Yep, you wanted 20 pounds to the acre of seed. The great thing about cover crops is maybe the first couple acres ended up at 10, or maybe they ended up at 40, and you just adjust the little slide on the broadcaster as you move across your whatever 5 or 10 acre piece is. It does not have to be rocket science here, guys. It is this simple to throw cover crop out there. Companion crop. So are we going to do a companion crop for us? We've been doing cover crop for generations. We just never called it cover crop. So what we always did was we'd seed alfalfa and oats at the same time. The oats come up very quick. They hold weeds back. And then you would actually have that cash crop of oats if you wanted to sell it. Or back in the dairy days, we would keep the oats for the dry cows and the young stock and make our own calf feed and put it in with the cow feed. And then that first cutting of alfalfa had some of that oat straw in it, which was not a bad thing. It really made a nice first cutting there. Or we could just leave the oats out. A lot of guys just left the oats in the alfalfa, and their first crop of hay off that field had oats with it, and the cattle absolutely love it. Or are we doing a standalone where we're just going to set aside 10 acres. We're going to play with cover crops. We're going to see what species grow, what ones don't work, and what it does to that soil in 1 year. If we just gave that 10 acres 1 year to cover crops to see what it could do, and then the next year we plant into that, and then we start interseeding from there, but then we see how does that crop work the next year. The thing here, pastures, if you are a beef guy, there is so much data. Look at Burleigh County out of North Dakota. Find about Jay Fair's videos on YouTube, or Burleigh County, North Dakota on YouTube. There's a couple hour-long conventions on there, and the amount of data that they have on pasture guys to put the cattle out on pasture. For feedlot guys like me, we raise fats. So we buy small steers and we raise them to big steers. They are showing fantastic gains on them steers out on pasture versus feedlot. They're showing comparable, if not better gains. They're showing better health. The pasture, we have a local guy here doing it. He used the data from North Dakota and it works fantastic. And what they're doing is, the funny part is, Central North Dakota is not known for a very corn productive. They're not the poster child for how to do a corn producing program. But them guys out in West Central North Dakota can raise corn cheaper than the big I states can on a per bushel basis, simply because they're doing soil health. They got the cattle out there. They're running $1 to $2 a bushel less on cost of production than some of the other people that are in these programs where they monitor costs, the FinBin type program, where I'm compared to 30 or 40 other farmers that's in this program, and they compare our cost of production on a per bushel or a per pound of gain if you're cattle, or a per gallon of milk or per pound of milk per day. And they compare that stuff, and then you're allowed to see, well, how is he able to do that? It's kept anonymous. You can't see, oh, well, that's Bob Johnson. I'm going to drive to Bob Johnson's place. But they can tell you how that guy is doing that. And these guys that are on beef that rotate corn into their program, they are growing some fantastic corn for nothing. For nothing. If you are beef and you are not doing some sort of cover crop pasture, you are missing out. The big thing here, the local guy here, and what they're doing in drought states is in July, August, when your grass burns up, they seed that cover crop in the spring. That pasture, the grass pasture in July, August, is now not producing anything. So instead of using your hay bales to supplement, they turn them loose on that cover crop, whether they do a creeping fence line or just open up the pasture to them. And then they can graze on that pasture well into winter until the snow just gets too deep. Around here, the snow would probably get too deep. Out in western North Dakota, they probably don't get enough snow to worry about it. They can graze almost all winter long. And here, depending on the winter, we'd be grazing most of the winter. Save your hay resource for the cold of winter when you finally got to bring them animals in. How are we going to do this? Are we going to do it as a broadcast or a drill? It's that simple. Are you going to drill it on a standalone? I have seen them salt dogs that you get from Northern Tool for spreading salt. They got a receiver hitch to go in the back of the pickup. They hold a couple $100 or a couple $100, and they just got a little DC motor. I've seen guys bolt them onto a row crop cultivator. They blow the seed forward, and then as the row crop cultivator comes through, it mixes it in for a lot better quality stand of your cover crop. Like I said, I just use a 3-point or a pull-type broadcaster. I've seen guys put them salt dogs on the back of their corn head or their bean head, so it's seeding as they're combining. I've seen guys take the old dry boxes off of planters, and they just kind of have a couple split tubes off. They come down, and they either have drag hoses. I've seen some guys take the little fertilizer disc openers from the planter, the old double disc from like a John Deere 7000 or something, and they just drop the seed just like it would have been fertilizer on the planter. I've seen guys drop a rod and just have rotary hoe wheels, field cultivator tines, the spring tines, not the S tines, but the old finger tines, and just kind of drag along the ground, drag chains. Your imagination is your limit. On 5 acres, I'd just get a broadcaster or a small grain drill. So now seed selection. You need to know based on your goal. So for me, end credits. So you go through the book, you just make note of every plant that can do an end credit that's producing or fixing nitrogen. So you just make note of all that. And then you start to narrow that list down. Okay, I know we've raised these in our area. These are new to me. You look at their planting dates. So for us, I'm going to seed somewhere between August 1st, between the 1st and the end of August is kind of where I'm going to seed. I'm going to push, now that I've seen how that ryegrass and oats took off, I'm probably going to push more towards the end of August because I don't want them getting so big that they're actually a mess to combine. And so probably towards the end of August I'll be seeding. But then you go through and you find all them seeds that are going to do your goal. If you want to fight compaction, go through the book, find seeds that fight compaction, and then kind of look at the dates between all them and ones that fit your seeding date based on how you're going to use it. You make note of that. The seed selection is easy, but that's just where it takes some time of actually just sitting down and doing some reading, making some phone calls. There's a lot of already pre-made mixes out there. We have a 3-acre kind of cover crop for the steers, what we're going to work on here this year. And that's simple. I just called up Albert Lee. What do you got for a pasture mix? Well, we already got this 3-species thing that has been working very well. Okay, I want to put some nitrogen producing in with that. Oh, well, okay, well, yep, let's add some alfalfa and a splash of clover. And then I asked about some oats, and he said, yep, oats would have complemented that very well, so let's add some oats too. And you're just talking a couple pounds to the acre of each thing. And boom, I mean, that was a half-hour phone call. Everything's said and done what we wanted. So the seed selection just might take some time if you're doing it on your own or use your resources. But that, guys, in a long story longer kind of, short story longer kind of situation, that's how I would get started on cover crops, or that's how I did get started on cover crops. And then just manage it, take notes, and monitor it and see how it goes. Guys, thanks for watching. Let's leave some conversation below to keep this thing going. Share this video if you want to. Like it if you want to. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Don't care. I just hope you enjoyed it and might have got something from it. Thanks for watching, guys.